If I told you to make the starting warrior stronger than the giant death robot in Civilization 6 without cheating, how would you do it? Well, smash that like button like my stepdad when the Henny starts metabolizing, and let's get sick in the lab like it's Wuhan and answer that question together. But which leader do you think is optimal to complete such a task? Like a dog hearing Mao's about to long jump again, anxiety overtakes me as our pick of Civilization is crucial to this challenge. But then it hits me. And after that I realize we have to play the Aztecs. However, this isn't going to work as I come to the gut-punching realization that Monty can't actually build a warrior, leaving me in a state of distress as the man whose genes would solve the fentanyl crisis was critical to my strategy. So what did I do? I used the God mod to spawn one in, but to make things fair, I euthanized my starting furry, which set me back considerably in defense and parental disappointment. But none of this tinkering will matter if Deity plays the SpongeBob flute solo with our bumholes, and so pay attention to this optimal setup to survive any early game. First, building a few units with flexible views on human rights before planning out a tech path as well as a crucial technology we'll reveal later. However, none of these techs actually give a boost to combat, but we'll still secure our first buff by turn 3. How did I do that? With the Giant's Causeway. Let's go ahead and watch what happens when a unit eats the magic rock and gains 5 combat strength through Liver King levels of testosterone, subsequently feeling proud of my Russian athlete. But my pride is short-lived. Why? Well, I depressingly realize my warrior would still resemble a special ed kid doing advanced NASA computations against the GDR. I need an easy way to gain combat strength, and the best way to do that early on is through combat experience. By engaging in mass murder of what may or may not be considered civilians, I can gain experience and secure 3 important promotions. And what is the best way to do that early on? By going Andrew Jackson on the native inhabitants. Let's go ahead and discover our first encampment, but my smile immediately turns into a frown upon its discovery, as I realize they are too strong and we need to wait for an advantage before we can take them on. But your expectations are about to be subverted, as unlike a college frat boy, the assaulter is going to be the one consuming the advantage. Pay attention to the discipline policy card, which grants 5 combat strength against barbarians, giving us the edge against spearmen. So let's go back with excitement in our pants and get that promotion. But would that be enough to emerge victorious? Pay attention as we finally engage in the epic battle, as I worryingly realize that they still hold a key advantage: the boats off the coast. If we move in with low health, they can eliminate my warrior, and in an anxious sweat, I carefully manage our health before slapping up the spearman so hard his teeth started repping for the bloods as I hold my breath when the boats make their move. And we survive, grabbing Battlecry for +7 combat strength as our special ed warrior now sits at 32 combat strength. But that number pales in comparison to what a religion would give us. Which religion? Well, it's more specifically one belief that will change our game, but first we actually have to found one. And so let's go back to that one crucial technology I mentioned earlier, astrology, but that's not all. Watch this tribal village as it grants a relic. This is huge as it will help us use that one belief to its fullest. But before I can explain how, alarms are sounded as we are in grave danger. While you might be thinking that we can use the barbs to farm more XP, that is not going to help us here. You see, there is only so much that murdering civilians who are showing their backs to you can actually provide. And with our one promotion, we now get reduced XP from barbs, but there is still a way we can farm them. Clearing out their camps, regardless of level, will always give 10 XP, but despite discipline and battlecry, barbarians are still a terrifying threat. And that's all because of this one unit. Listen intently to what I'm about to say. If we let a scout get back alive, the only hope we have is bending over and opening wide while they spawn an ungodly amount of units. So I need to ensure that I always have the production necessary to deal with such a threat. How do we do that? A lot of cities. Placing all my map tags and sending out my settler to settle the city of Malinalco. But while my capital continues popping out settlers, that still won't be enough. enough. We still have the ever-present danger of a barbarian invasion, and so I sent my newly produced Jaguar warrior to deal with the threat. Let's watch and enjoy as he starts cropping the barbs from your screen like they were Soviet officers, but one does get away, which is okay. As after my warrior arrives for the assist, his life expectancy is that of a main character in a drone strike video, but I was left disappointed, as my hypothesis was correct and my warrior gains almost no experience. It is slightly made up for by giving him the honors to plunder the camp, bringing him closer to the second promotion, while also saving our capital, which is too busy dealing with a major problem. What do you see? Well, it's producing settlers far too slowly, even after gonna have to be careful with naming Monty's cities lest I get cancelled. But more importantly, we need a way to increase settler production, and I have just the plan. 3 plans in fact, and they all stack. Firstly, we grab the Columbus Clobberer policy card, giving us 50% production towards settlers. But before I can mention the other 2 plans, a disaster strikes and that's a 1,000-year flood? There was a slight breeze yesterday. Lucky I managed to survive Hurricane Katrina. But thankfully, that puddle did little to damage our empire, as the early game setup was flawless, and we now enter the mid-game and need to discover our future victims. Sending my slinger to explore the unknown, but that might not be the most optimal unit to explore with. Let's go ahead and read its combat strength. Yeah, we'd have better odds of mapping out the south side of Chicago with an open-top Lamborghini, but unfortunately, he's all we got. But while he's doing that, there is a massive project that needs to be completed. We still have to claim all this land, and so we get to the second way to make settlers faster. Political philosophy, unlocking Ancestral Hall, which gives us another 50% boost to building settlers, which is going to be key as there is a secret continent that is about to break my game open. But we won't find that continent east. Instead, our slinger meets our first potential victim. Tamar, whose face corners are socially distancing from each other, would prove a suitable punching bag. But I'm left disappointed as she is just too far away, but we at least have a plan B just in case we don't meet anyone else. As my plan A is finally ready. The Great Prophet allows us to found our religion, as these pincers inspire me. But more importantly, why do I want a religion? The answer is Crusade, granting a monstrous 10 combat strength against your brothers of the faith being oppressed in enemy cities, which is why I need to buy missionaries to spread my religion, and as you can see, the extra faith from the relic becomes crucial. Our super warrior is now sitting at 42 combat strength, about as strong as a medieval man-at-arms. But unfortunately, we kind of hit a wall. You see, this is about as strong as we can make our warrior without more cities. And that leads us to the third way to make settlers faster. John D. Rockefeller. Provision lets me keep the population the city would lose through building a settler, which in turn grants more workers, which leads to more production and more settlers. Now with all 3 cards of Exodia, settler production ramps up, which will prove necessary as we make first contact with the brave new continent. But this might be the worst possible thing that's happened this game. But as we chase after him, he turns on the jets and unfortunately gets away. We might as well use this forward momentum to explore the new continent, despite the fact I'd rather put a lit firework into my mouth before approaching the zip code of the no doubt loaded encampment. So let's go ahead and watch as our forces move in. Okay, a few more, that might be I guess England needed a new penal colony. After my troops get bum-fiddled in the white van of the map and run home crying, I determine that I'll have to prepare a capable fighting force to deal with this problem and gain the massive benefits this island has to offer. And after hypothesizing 3 jaguars would prove plenty, our forces move in hypothesis was incorrect, run! Despite Chris Paul hitting a huge 3 to cut the lead to 42, it appears we need much stronger units to deal with those numbers. But before I can do that, our nation is crippled. Okay, so thousands die, city annihilated, mint condition shacks ruined. And it barely registers against that little splash from earlier. But while I could take this time to stabilize my crumbling cities, there is a task much more important. We need to find a victim, and the slinger isn't cutting it. And so, I'm forced to betray my morals, and with a tear in my eye, I do the unthinkable.
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
With my spiritual manhood now castrated, let's look outwards and answer the question of which civ is my victim going to end up being. My scouts struggled as the other civs are better hidden than Epstein flight logs. But as they continue, we run into a major problem, as it seems the TCLR subscribers have taken up my mantle, leaving the scout in a more precarious position than getting catcalled in a New York back alley. Through this fear and abject terror, the adrenaline allows my scout to survive and seek refuge in a new civilization, the Australians. Concluding they're close enough for invasion, we start salivating with maximum pleasure, as we now have our victim. But unfortunately, we can't do anything at our current technological level, and in order to improve our standing, there's one thing we need: more policy slots. But which Tier 2 government reform would best suit us? We need one that aids in combat either directly or indirectly, and after some stressful deliberations, decide on theology to gain the advantage in religious combat to convert Australia peacefully through force. Well, it seems Sandman is a titty person, but as I'm too busy gazing at Sandman's master prestige nut, something happens that puts our entire challenge in jeopardy. Watch our settler and how Georgia intercepts both him and our missionary with her apostle army. This is disastrous, and not because this missionary is about to get perused more thoroughly than a woman in a Japanese subway. You see, if they succeed in converting our cities, we lose our religion and all the crusade benefits that would provide us. And so we build up our own apostle army with the faith we were sitting on, as I steel my heart for the oncoming religious war. Luckily, one of my political streamers secured the all-powerful debater promotion. This promotion is incredible and works well with theology's +10 combat bonus, by providing another 20 as he single-handedly wins the battle in a decisive me to Yadwiga's Jugs victory. Feeling pleased now that that war is taken care of, I'm reminded of another battle that is still causing me headaches. Out west, the Barbs still control the continent, and so I mobilize an army of horsemen in another attempt to deal with the 6 or so, the now 50 immortals. Well, it's safe to say the situation has not necessarily developed to our advantage. But as we retreat in shame, we see something that might change the game forever. By dashing headfirst into the meteorite, we sacrifice our horsemen in a Hail Mary to change our fortunes. You see this meteorite? Well, it gifts you the most advanced cavalry unit you can build, which might be strong enough to deal with these numbers, but that of course depends on the unit. And that unit for us is a knight. And so I order my knight to charge into the unsettled continent. What was that about Jesus? Hey, Tamar, can you stop? Russian fuck toy, Russian fuck toy. But as I take stock of my forces meant to deal with Georgia in the east, I mistook my scout for an Amish wife with how he keeps delivering. Meeting a goblin even Vosh wouldn't touch, and not because she's an adult. Now you might be asking, haven't you already found your victim? What do you need this skibbity toilet looking motherfucker for? Well, I assure you, dear viewer, that this troll we pulled from out under a bridge is pivotal to our future plans. But for now, hush real quick. Do you hear that? It's time to begin the grand cavalry offensive as we shatter their lines through shock and awe. They send more and more of their reserves in an effort to stop our knight, but he just kept making Dookie run down the legs of anyone brave enough to act as a speed bump for our savior. To aid this advance, we need a resupply point closer to the front line to heal and recruit more forces. But how will we do that with supply trucks so far off in the tech tree? Well, by using the creeping barrage tactic, we settle newly liberated lands, and after using the extra forces to form a core out of our knights, this island is just about liberated. And as we heal for the final push, let's check on what's going on domestically. After composing my terrified self, it's time to plan out this offense. Okay, well, align infantry. Fantastic. I am enjoying this as we defeat him without too much. Like carbon monoxide to hemoglobin, the infantry firmly inserts itself into my lands and refuses to leave. I was furious as this disaster was approaching restart territory before we secure another boon, or rather, another meteor. With a second Night Corps forming, we beat back the trench infantry and arrive at the lightly defended encampment before geno-sliding into their settlement using our warrior to perform the honors. However, with time running out, this may prove to be the last time he obtains experience before our final tests, so we'll have to find a way to get those 2 promotions. But as good as the promotions are, they are nothing compared to this island where all my hopes and dreams are predicated on. But why do I need it? Well, what do you notice about this island? You see, Montezuma gets 1 combat strength for every luxury resource you improve in your empire. Overall, we obtain 30 combat strength from luxuries, giving my warrior now 72 combat strength, which for reference sake is slightly weaker than the infantry, but we can still make him stronger. Unfortunately, after researching mobilization, there is no more strength to be gained from technological development. So I'm sure you're asking yourself, what now? We'll get into mobilization a little later after we talk about the most important unit that is pivotal to this challenge, the spy. You see, an easy way to get combat strength is having a diplomatic visibility advantage over your opponent. But how does the spy provide diplo visibility? Well, by ordering the spy to monitor radio waves, we secure the highest level you can achieve, top secret. And assuming +9 from combat strength, our warrior is now sitting on 81 points. But that's not all the setup we need to prepare for John, as his cities, after all this time, are still not following our cult. This enrages me. Using my large amount of faith to spam by apostles, we begin converting not just his border cities as Tamar earlier converted John, which had the double effect of depleting his faith numbers, leaving me able to sweep through at least half his empire, entrenching my religion for good. However, in my rush to perform all the flashy tasks like converting enemy cities, I have made not 1, but 2 vital mistakes that may sink my campaign for good. The first of which can be easily rectified, being my need for not just 1, but 3 warriors. Using the God mod, I am able to spawn a few in, but you might be asking, why do I need 3 of them? Well, that's because of the civic we previously discussed of nationalism. Nationalism allows the formation of 3 units into 1 army, giving us a stronger, more cohesive force, and another 17 combat strength. Now at 98 combat strength and stronger than mechanized infantry, we need a name for our superb spearhead, and I have just the one, the Ass Clickers. We can do better. Leave any ideas for names down below. I also spawned in 9 of, if I thought Montezuma cities were bad, I really have to be careful now, which kind of counters the cheating I've done this game. But despite that relative disadvantage, this game is all about warrior combat strength, and while the warrior itself is ready to test his mettle, nobody else is. And even my warrior, who just fills me with pride, isn't strong enough to solo an enemy civilization. We need armor and air cover. But even after building such a formidable fighting force, we need a general to lead our armies. But there is a problem. Great generals don't actually work on ancient era units like our warrior. So how can we find someone gifted enough to lead our army of short bus riders I gave pointy sticks to? Well, the more astute of you may have noticed a few unique icons running about, and one of those special units is Himiko. With her unique ability, all nearby units are granted 5 combat strength. And now at 103 combat strength, with my special ed warrior now special grade, we officially declare war. But wait. You guessed it, we can cheese that too. Going to the line leader of our warriors and issuing a joint declaration will grant more combat strength. Why? Well, now we can sign a military alliance which grants us 5 combat strength against any common enemies. Now with 108 combat strength, it's time to invade the Australians. But 108, while monstrous in its own right, still leaves us well short of 130. So how am I going to make up the difference? Firstly, tactics. There is a reason we brought tanks earlier instead of other units. With their movement speed, we surround and isolate an individual unit, granting +2 combat strength for every every flanking unit, which in our case pushes the number up to about 114. But that's not all, as I actually failed in one of my earlier plans. Without gaining enough experience for the other 2 promotions I need, I am missing out on a huge amount of combat strength. So I again use the God mod just to demonstrate, of course, and grant my warrior Urban Warfare for +10 in districts, and Zweihander for +7 against anti-cav, which already stacks on my warriors' innate ability of 5 against anti-cav like the modern AT. Now, how does my warrior perform better against Mujahideen heat-seeking rocket launchers? I couldn't tell you. But before we check how high our combat strength actually gets, there is still one last final piece of the puzzle, and the second critical misplay I talked about earlier: government. Now, as a dumbass, I didn't take oligarchy earlier on, meaning I can't make use of the legacy card, which grants 4 combat strength to melee units, so we'll just add +4 to whatever the final number ends up being. But that still leaves us with probably the greatest ideology to ever exist, for military purposes of course, which grants us another 5 combat strength, and all that added together, what does our final total end up being? Well, for those of you who weren't keeping track, we arrive at a whopping 140 combat strength against anti-cav, and 144 if we went for oligarchy. Now this is against anti-cav, but even still, against a giant death robot, that would still leave us at 132. And thus our starting, lowly, weak warrior is now granted the title of John D with how he rocked a fella, ending off this video as the strongest unit in Civilization 6. But while this military-based challenge was difficult, it was nowhere near as challenging as my last video where I beat Civ 6 while in a permanent war with the entire world.